Hello out there in Incoming Land. Welcome to another bonus episode of Incoming. Today is a conversation between me and Chris Pahlow, who is my co-writer on a few episodes in season 1, including the one we're talking about today, I Do Drive a Hard Bargain, episode 8. I want to make sure you know there are many spoilers, so many spoilers. So if you haven't listened to the episode yet, you should listen to the episode first and listen to us talk about the minutia of how we wrote it, how we recorded it, what we were thinking, etc., etc. We've got a bunch of these, but this one in particular I felt kind of brought you behind the game to see a little bit about what we were thinking. I hope you like it. And if you do, send me a note and maybe we'll put up more of them. If you ever want to reach out to me directly, please do so. David at incomingpodcast.com. I'm always psyched to hear from you. And again, I want to hear what you would do if you got the alert and you only had 20 minutes left to live. So you can send me an email and tell me that. You can send us a DM on Instagram. You can comment on Spotify. But if you're really brave and you send me a voice recording of what you would do, I will put you right on our show. We are working hard on season 2. We recorded an episode we are very excited about on Friday of last week. And it's all happening. But today, it's just a conversation between me and my good friend, Chris Pahlow. Enjoy. I'm David Singer. I'm the creator of Incoming. This is my friend Chris Pahlow, who co-wrote 4 of the 8 episodes with me. And we're going to talk a little bit about our final episode of season 1, which is called I Do Drive a Hard Bargain. Chris, welcome to Crossfire.
I love the name of the behind the pod. I'm very happy to be here on Crossfire. Thank you, David.
You're quite welcome.
Should we start by talking about how do we even come up with ideas for this show?
A lot of the ones we did together just started with the two of us like bullshitting about what are the different scenarios that would bring about this sort of unique and claustrophobic interaction between people. And we talked about the idea of being trapped somewhere with your ex.
We have like a really long list of different situations or questions, like what would you do if you were in this situation? Or like how would this be heightened by an apocalyptic disaster? And I think, the idea of being trapped with your ex was probably on the page. And I spent a number of years working on developing a TV show about a couple exploring non-monogamy. And I've got another friend who's worked on a show about having a secret family. So I think all these ideas were swirling around and we're like, wow, it's so awkward. Imagine if you walk in and you see your partner with the other person or your ex-partner with the other person. It's super awkward. How can we heighten that? And I think the original idea for this episode, I think it might have even been they were still together and they caught the affair, in progress, in situ, and they had to sit in that moment. They couldn't leave the house while the warning was going on.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that the conversation was, what's the worst case scenario being trapped with someone for an extended period of time? And we talked about this when we first started. The idea was that it was going to be, the 20 minutes or 30 minutes until they found out that the missiles weren't coming. But as this idea developed, and I want to warn everybody, we're going straight into spoiler land. So if you want to listen to the episode first, I think that's probably a good idea. We talked about the idea of them being trapped for an even longer amount of time. And also we've explored the idea in other episodes, I won't say which one, of what happens if the missile actually lands and it doesn't end with the all clear. So these ideas kind of converge with what if the missile came and the resolution of the missile idea happened at the very beginning of the episode, rather than in all the other ones, the format is we meet these people, they get the alert, and then it goes on for a while, and then we find out what happens, and then there's a little bit in the end. But from a structural standpoint, we decided to make one where the missile issue, as it's called, gets resolved at the very beginning of the episode, and then we decided to turn the screws on these people and see what would happen if they were trapped together for a week or longer. 100%. And that's when the fun began. And when I say fun, I don't mean fun. I mean some other word. Because when we first talked about it, it was a comedy, right?
Yeah, it was much sillier. And I think when you say that's where the fun began, ironically, you're not only talking about for our characters, but I think also for you as well, David. I think this might have been the most frustrating one we worked on together. And to give you a bit of context about how the scripting works, so I got to be totally clear. The show is 100% David's vision. When we first met in Austin, you'd already got, was it 2 or 3 episodes written? You already had the show really fleshed out.
There were more, but a lot of them didn't make it to the audio version. They were TV version.
The show was really well developed. So like when David and I talked about me coming on, I have to respect David's vision, and I kind of see my role as like, what can I possibly do to help David achieve his vision of the show to its fullest extent, right? And as script producer, one of the things I'm looking at is not just the individual episodes, but thinking about, well, how does the whole season feel? And pretty quickly, as David's saying, we hit on the idea of like, wouldn't it be interesting to have the missile land straight away? Because that doesn't happen in any other episodes. And so quickly we're talking about, what do we do to surprise the listeners? What do we do to have twists and turns over the course of the season? And it made sense to make this the last episode. But that was quite challenging from a writing perspective, because we're writing a really different type of episode, and we're trying to figure out, how do we, one, end the season in a way that's really satisfying and so people feel like they've been on a great journey and they may be excited for a season 2 if we can make that happen. How do we make it surprising and a new experience without abandoning all the things they already love about the show? And how do we have a kind of sad, almost tragic episode as our last one? There's quite a few writing challenges, and we went back and forth on this script, I think, probably more than any other one in the season. Is that fair?
I think you're probably right. I think that one of the other things to consider is that the premise of the show, the plot point about the missile alert notwithstanding, is that you meet these people and you get a sense of what their life is like. And then this thing happens that becomes the fulcrum on which everything else in their life changes, because it's thrown into high relief, and it's, who do I want to be? Who am I going to be with? How am I going to change? And it's how this event changes them. And there was something sort of perfectly symmetrical about the idea of these people existing in the world after a nuclear missile has come and they've survived it, but it's destroyed the world around them. And that parallels very neatly in my mind to people who've undergone a very recent divorce, people who've had their whole life and their whole world built around another person and their relationship with that person, and then it disappeared, and they're forced to kind of rebuild a new life out of the rubble that surrounds them. And so we were trying to not hit the metaphor with a large comical clown mallet, but those ideas existed in our minds at the same time. And it took us a little while to dial in the tone, I think, because we started out as like a straight comedy, and then we started making it, well, it's got serious undertones. And then we realized it's really a pretty serious story. One of the most pivotal things that helped us understand what this was about was when they had the idea to put Patty in the hallway. So these 3 people have been in this apartment for X number of days, and they realize they're waiting it out together, and they've achieved a sort of détente where they're not going to kill each other. They're having as relatively placid a time as they can considering the circumstances. And then what happens if there's a knock at the door and there's somebody out there who needs their help and they're not in agreement about what they're supposed to do going forward? We talked a lot about Patty, and you should know out there in audience land that Chris and I are partners. We write a lot of stuff together. And I think the dynamic is I have insane flights of fancy, and Chris tries to keep me honest to what we're trying to do, what we should do, and what makes sense from a artistic and thematic standpoint. It's a dynamic that works for us, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we're a great odd couple, I think. It works well.
Yeah. 2 Felixes in search of an Oscar.
Sure.
But the idea of Patty initially was like, again, it had the possibility of being comical, but then we sort of immediately hit on the idea that what if Hannah wants to let them in, and then Andy doesn't, and then Andy has an unlikely ally in Jesse. So the two people who Hannah is in between find themselves sort of in league against her making this decision. And it's that idea of shifting alliances and the ground being unsteady beneath all of their feet that sort of gave that part of the story its own momentum.
I think going back to what you were saying a moment ago, David, about the whole scenario of being locked in this situation and climbing through the rubble being like the process of emerging from a divorce or a traumatic breakup. I think Patty's introduction and these shifting alliances kind of echo through that metaphor as well, thinking about if you are having an affair or, even if you've had a breakup and you're dating someone new, you can have that like new relationship energy, that the kind of the glow, and you think, this is amazing, this person's perfect for me. But you haven't seen them fart in front of you. You haven't seen them put the dishes in a completely insane fashion in your cupboard, And I think, again, we're trying to find a heightened way to explore the natural tensions that can come in any human relationship.
And also the idea of, Hannah, I think, is ultimately sympathetic, and I think Hannah's a good person. But she's also at this point in her life before this of this sort of heightened narcissism where she's like, what do I need for myself? And everybody else in my orbit is going to have to just deal with me being whoever I am and wanting whatever I want for right now while I figure it out. And again, apologies for the spoiler, but it builds to the climax at the end where Andy is sort of like, I've had enough of this. And the way forward for each of them is for him to figure out what he wants for himself at the same time she's finding it for herself. And I find it really touching because of the performance of Karen Rodriguez about, at the end where she says this sort of semi-delusional, I really think the trial separation might work this time. And it's one of those lies that people tell themselves. None of us are exempt from it. But there's something, she's such a gifted performer. There's something so real. I believe that she believes it when she says it. And that's to her credit. Let's talk a little bit about the cast. So Chris, as we mentioned earlier, was in Australia. He was unable to come in for the session. So it was just me and my partners, Brian and Marika, and the actors. We filmed it the first week of 2024, We recorded it the first week of 2024. It was like the coldest possible stretch of Chicago weather you could ever get. It was like 60 degrees below zero. And we were bundled up in this recording studio. And it was 3 actors who I had never met in person before. And I am so incredibly lucky that we got them. So it's, as I said, Karen Rodriguez as Hannah, Isa Arceniegas as Jesse, and Adam Bartley as Andy. And they had a really sort of innate chemistry between them because they're smart and they're good at their craft. And we really got 3-dimensional people fast. It's not always that easy, but I feel like these people really got a sense of who their characters were. And it would be kind of easy to shit on them, right? You get cast as Hannah, who's a narcissist. You get cast as Andy, who's a doormat. Or you get cast as Jesse, who's kind of like a bit of a bully. And it would be easy for those of us who aren't actors like me to think of judging them. And you can tell from the nuance of the way that they portrayed these people that they didn't judge them, that they thought of them as real and sympathetic people. And the show is so much the better for it.
Totally agree.
What's it like for you to have us spend all this time writing this episode and then have me just like drop these performances on you and hear what they actually sounded like coming out of human mouths?
It's fascinating. And I'm not going to lie, it's very often an emotional journey because sometimes you have to let go of the vision you had so you can embrace the beautiful thing that's in front of you. I don't know where this idea originates from, but I think they say in Hollywood, a movie's only ever going to get worse from the scripting standpoint, right? Like, because it's this war of attrition with executives and all these different people, too many fingers in too many pies, right? And one of the things I love about the way this show has moved through production and into post is we always kept a lot of openness. And so when I was listening back to the raw tape from this episode, little touches that the actors added in really colored in their character in such beautiful ways. And I think that really contributed to what you're talking about, David, making them feel really three-dimensional, making sure, no one comes across as like a 2D villain. And sometimes it's just the way they say a line, but sometimes they also add little bits that I find really, really charming. Like, it's definitely not anywhere near as improvised as What's Wrong with Me, but I think giving the actors freedom to inhabit those characters has brought a lot, and the way you directed them, magnificent.
Well, that's generous. Thank you. Well, while we're talking about these great performances, I want to single out one particularly incredible performance, and it's by my friend Mary Lou Henner, who plays Patty, the lady in the hallway. Now, I was lucky enough to meet Mary Lou Henner when she was a part of my film called Imperfections, and she's a real one. And sometimes you go through your life and you meet people and yeah, that was cool. We had this interaction. I'll never see you again. But Mary Lou Henner is like my real friend for life. And she is an incredible performer, an incredible talent, and she's just a good friend. So I texted Mary Lou hey, I'm doing this project and I have this part. She got back to me in literally 15 seconds and was like, I'm happy to do it. She recorded her part from her house in California, place I will not locate in case one of her many admirers wants to come see her in person. But Mary Lou Henner it's iconic for people of my age, but she's also such a thoughtful and sensitive person. Mm-hmm. And she made Patty so real and so sympathetic. And then when she makes the turns from being desperate to furious, it makes it believable because you feel like it's a real person out there in the hallway. And Mary Lou, should you ever watch this, I love you. Thank you for doing this. I owe you, pal.
Couldn't agree more. Great performance. It's such a small role, but it's a pivotal role. And she brought so much to it.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about also is the sound design of this, because the sound design is so much about what makes this episode feel real. So start with our partner, Brian Hensley, who's the sound designer and the mixer for all of these episodes. And he created that unbelievable explosion when the missile actually lands, which is so real. And he made that apartment sound as claustrophobic as it did. He made Patty sound like she was coming from the hallway. And then at the end, once again, super spoiler, when Andy and Hannah are at the sort of refugee evacuation center, he made that feel real too, right? Like a bustling crowd, helicopters overhead, buses getting ready to leave. There's so much that Brian did that made it seem like it was really happening. And special shout out to Victoria Salazar, our Atmos mixer. If you're one of those lucky people who has fancy headphones like AirPod Pros or something, every one of our incoming episodes is mixed in Dolby Atmos, so you can experience it and make it feel like it's happening in 3 dimensions all around your little head.
I just want to zoom into what you were saying about making the apartment feel real, because that was probably more challenging than I think listeners might imagine, because the geography of the apartment is pretty essential to some of the plot points. It's a relatively small space, but we need to create zones for private conversations where we can have allegiances changing. And the audience can't see what's happening. They can't see if a door's open and one of the characters can see the others whispering to each other. And so I think the storytelling would have completely fallen apart if it wasn't for Brian and his team's amazing work. It's one of those things that you'll only ever notice if it's not working. But when it is working, right, it just feels normal.
Yeah, that's what we have in this medium instead of set design and costuming and cinematography. We just have Brian making everything sound as good as it can sound.
And he sure does.
Thanks again to my friend Chris Pahlow, my co-writer and collaborator, and the guy I hang out with on Zoom for the past 4 years. You can check out a bunch of the other projects we have going on, if that kind of thing interests you, at nobodymove.studio. That's the name of our little collaboration, Nobody Move. Thank you for listening. to Incoming. Thank you for telling a friend. Thank you for leaving us reviews. Thank you for giving us, 150 stars on every platform possible. We're working hard on season 2. Send me an email. I want to hear from you. David@incomingpodcast.com. Talk to you soon.